last week, California voters passed Proposition 50, allowing the state to redraw congressional districts. It will potentially result in 5 more seats held by Democrats. And this was in response to Texas doing the same to get more GOP seats. Several other states have redrawn their lines mid-decade or are thinking about it. Democrats generally have wanted nonpartisan commissions to do this job, including right here in New York. We had one until it didn't quite work. So, Anirban, should Governor Hochul push to redraw these lines here in New York?
So before I make the normative claim, I just want to make sure where I stand, right? The independent redistricting commissions are kind of the trend, had been kind of the trend in this country, and it creates fairer electoral maps. It is better for democracy. It promotes equitable representation. Now, having said that, there are 2 things going on. One is the Supreme Court case with the Voting Rights Act. If that part falls, then we can see Republicans adding between, as the surveys go, between 12 and 19 seats from the South. Of course, in a partisan environment, hyper-partisan environment, if you will, the Democrats must respond. They have to respond. If you're a Democratic strategist, you will ask them to respond. Now, it might be actually the case that if Virginia, which is kind of a, a violet state, a kind of light blue state, if they want to change their constitution, as we are seeing, in order to add more seats, and other Democratic states start doing that, changing their constitution in order to add seats, Democrats can actually close in that gap that the Republicans started.
Right,
so there would be a fight to see what that gerrymandering fight ends up at. But yes, Hochul should do it because everybody else is doing it.
So fight fire with fire, even though it may not be good for democracy?
It is not good for democracy, and I do agree independently.
Okay, it's not good for democracy, but we should go ahead and do it? I mean,
because what happens, are we willing to live with the consequences if only red states do this and blue states don't? So I totally agree with Anirban. Now, there is some good news. I mean, there are some states that are fighting this. Both Indiana and Kansas have blocked this, 2 red states. It appears Maryland may not be willing to go. So I would be all in favor if Texas rolled back their decision, if North Carolina reverse this, but the fact is, if one side continues to play one side, one set of rules, the other, unfortunately, I think, is forced to do that. Otherwise, we have to live with the long-term consequences, which I think are worse for democracy.
You'd prefer it didn't happen, but it's
regrettable.
Happen.
Right. I mean, it is regrettable because it's going to calcify our already historic partisan polarization, and it will also undermine faith in the electoral process. But what I've always taught to my students in my Intro to American Politics class is that so much about election outcomes are decided before a single person casts a vote, first through the choice of an apportionment plan, and then also through redistricting. But I agree with my colleagues here. I don't see what there is to discuss here, because if you have one side that is rigging the game and the other side sits on principle on the sideline and does nothing, then that further undermines the democratic nature of both our electoral process, but also the decisions that come out of the elected legislative bodies. Those will not be representative. And so it is incumbent upon Democrats to ensure that this process is democratic.
Now, this all started with Texas, right? Mm-hmm. And don't mess with Texas. But it sounds like possibly after last week's election that it's not out of the question that could backfire the way the Hispanic vote shifted in the elections last week.
It absolutely could. And the other possibility in terms of backfiring is the fact that you do have, as Rick mentioned, Republican-led states pushing back against this. And, ultimately, assuming our governor does go ahead and support redistricting, then really I think there also needs to be a second part of this, and that is, what is the plan afterwards? Do you create a new independent commission, not with equal numbers of Democrats and Republicans, because that clearly didn't work? There has been suggestion that there shouldn't be any politicians on the redistricting commission. It should be, independent citizens who are not so self-interested. And so that, I think, is the second part of this, and probably the more important part at this point in our history.
I do wonder, once you go down this road, can you ever get back to a more measured process?
Well, California did. California had a very partisan, they had set up a map which ensured that all incumbents won of both parties, and that's when the public went and changed their constitution. Charlie Munger, who was one of the driving forces of this, they got in the bipartisan commission, and California ended up with a more balanced election. So I do think you can go back.
And it was voters that recognized what was happening on the national scale, not just by a smidgen, but by over 60%. And it's remarkable, the idea that voters in California went to the polls to vote for an idea. There weren't any candidates on the ballot. It was to support this idea that the system should not be rigged. And even if it is already rigged, we shouldn't rig it even more.
And California has a deadline on it. This is only, they're going to go back to the commission in 2 years. So.
Well, I think three, I was going to make that point. I think 3 cycles.
Oh, is it 3 cycles?
3 cycles. And I did just hear, well, yesterday, I believe the Justice Department is now trying to block the California move, saying that would be more racial gerrymandering, which is...
It's very strange because we started with Texas, and that's why we are here.
Yes,
Exactly.
yes.
Right. Well, yeah, I wonder whether they would enter the case against Texas. Probably not, right?
Probably.
Yeah, probably. And that one was proven in court to have racial overtones.
That's right.
Right.